we're going to talk about defending the SMB. So when we talk about SMBs, there's a lot of different metrics on how we can talk about them. Their size, their industry, the revenue that they pull in. It all kind of is different depending on your industry. So what we're going to talk about, though, is the smaller of the small, or in some cases, the smallest of the small. So, and of course, the, what do you call it, has failed me. Okay, so the clicker. So quick intro. So I'm founder of Secure Point Solutions. We've been in business for 4 years. Basically, we help the smallest of businesses with all things cybersecurity. We also help their IT providers, those mom and pop shops that are still doing maybe a time and materials type work, or anything that's just not quite to the level that maybe some of us are used to. I've been in the managed service and the small business space for a decade now. I was with an MSP for a while, transitioning more from infrastructure into security, because at that time, I watched ransomware find its way to small businesses. We had 3 to 5 clients impacted every week, and no way really to stop them. Before all that, I was a system administrator to enterprise environments, Hewlett Packard, Microsoft, DuPont Pioneer. And then way even before I got into IT, I was in the Navy doing operations intelligence, cool stuff. So all of that to say, I've supported environments down from 1 computer all the way up to 30-some thousand devices. All right, so why does this talk matter? Well, we're already talking to these small businesses. We are guiding them, but we can't be everywhere. We're based in Iowa. We are a national company, but we still can't be everywhere. So 90% of the businesses in the United States have 9 or less employees. So when we think about all these FANG companies, we think about all these other really big industries, those only represent 0.1% of the businesses overall. So that 90%, that is 13 million. 13 million businesses with 9 or less people. Guarantee almost none of them are going to have an IT person, definitely not having a security person. And we'll kind of get into that a little bit more. But these are the places that you go to. This is your kid's dentist. This is your chiropractor. This is the awesome coffee shop that you and your spouse get away from everybody every Saturday, and that you go and hang out at. Okay. We all know, or we should all know, that businesses make their money by taking risks. The coffee shop owner is taking a risk in buying a new espresso machine, in making a new drink. Your chiropractor took a risk opening a practice when maybe there's 4 others in the area. So taking risks is what businesses have to do. And then a lot of them cannot operate without their computers. And I don't mean that like they're incapable. I just simply mean that if you took their computers away today and told them to go back to pen and paper, it'd be a massive struggle. And obviously, the threat actors out there know that as well. And in some cases, these challenges even include just themselves. So they need your help. They need people that are just, IT or security practitioners. Yes, very SMB. Actually, one of my best clients is a sales manager for Mary Kay. She has 1 computer, and she wanted every bell and whistle that we could offer her. And we just simply said, you don't have a need for some of these things. You don't have that. So some of the obstacles we're going to talk about: leadership, resources, and vendors. Leadership. Okay, so sometimes leadership is the ownership. Sometimes the ownership is leadership. And what I mean by that is that there are some businesses, even as small as 9 people, that they get to the point where the owner can step back and say, yep, I hired a general manager, and they're the one that's running things. So buy-in for small business tech is hard. As I said before, I was with an MSP, and it was somewhat easy to tell a person, hey, this server is 10 years old. The hard drives are grinding. It's out of it's completely out of whack. You got to get rid of it. A computer that you tell them, hey, it's running Windows 7. Windows 7 is no longer supported. You need to get rid of it. They would kind of understand that. Cybersecurity, that is where they can't see it and they don't understand it. So very, very difficult to explain cybersecurity threats versus just, hey, your IT's old and crusty. So some ownership, leadership, they don't care. This Michigan practice was forced to close. We could probably get the link in there, but it will be linked in the slides. It's simply they got hit with ransomware. The ransom was $6,500, and they chose not to pay the ransom, partly because they said, well, we don't have a guarantee that we'll get our money back or get our data back. So the attackers deleted it. This caused a massive ripple effect. You had people that were due to go, have follow-up appointments. Now they've got to go find find a different place and have have to kind of redo their medical history. If you've ever had to switch doctors, that is a major pain in the butt. Having to switch doctors after you've had some sort of major surgery, that sounds like that would freaking suck. All right, so then myths. And there's 3 myths that I hear way too much. Again, we're talking about in that small business area. We're too small to be hacked. Nothing that the proper villains want. I also want to give just a quick shout out to John Hammond. He had called bad guys proper villains, and I think I'm really going to start using that as much as possible. So nothing the proper villains want. And then I bought cyber insurance. Well, it will never happen to us. We all know these are wrong, and we can overcome each one of those very quickly. I'm too small to be hacked. Hey, let me show you something called Shodan. And do you know your IP? Let's figure it out. Look, your webcam is exposed to the internet. Or there's other businesses that stuff is exposed. Taking somebody on a Shodan safari like that in their own neighborhood is really beneficial. Nothing they want. Well, we all know attackers want, first off, they want your data that they can sell it. If they can't, after they've sold it, or if it's not worth selling, they're going to encrypt it and hold it for ransom. And then finally, they may just use your network as a pivot point. Nothing worse than getting a cold call from the FBI to say, hey, we need to look at your computers because they were used in an attack. So then the next part, no in-house voice. I have seen companies of this size where their office manager is the de facto IT person because they minored in computer science 30 years ago. Or in a company that maybe has the young generation, they have a Gen Xer there who actually knows how to Google things and run updates. They become the de facto IT person in addition to their marketing role or whatever else they're having to do. Lack of resources. All right, so I'm gonna bang on providers a little bit. So if you're if you're an IT provider of some sort, I'm gonna call you out a little bit here. So first off, minimums. A lot of managed service providers offer or have minimum prices, minimum costs for their services. Now, those services would be, everything's included, but simply those numbers typically stack up to where it might be $800 a month. And that's kind of talking in my area. It'd be $800 a month. And if you crunch the math, depending on unit price, so, per computer or per user, that's 14 to 20 users, depending on if they're charging you $40, $50, $60 a month for each device. So that company with 5 computers, they can't afford this. They're not going to pay $800. It'd be a struggle enough to get them to pay $300, $400. But that's what the MSPs do. And there's a lot of different reasons for it, and I won't go into all of them, but there is some administrative cost every time you onboard a customer, and that is part of it. Lack of experience. Most IT providers are locked into providing IT. They're dealing with break fix. They're dealing with copiers. They're setting up user accounts in 365. They're installing servers, installing computers. They don't have the time or the abilities to handle security issues. A lot of times they will put their reliance on certain vendors. So a vendor will come in and say, well, our tool is white glove and you don't ever have to touch it and it's 24/7, blah, blah, blah. Well, now you've shifted the security responsibility to a vendor. Hopefully the paperwork, protects you if the vendor messes up. Time. So business owners, business leaders, they're still working in the business versus on the business. And that includes me. I still take out the trash. I still occasionally shred papers. I'm still doing tech stuff. But it's such a difficult part when you're focusing on the business or in the business to then step back and say, oh, those are the other things that I need to work on. All right, money. Money's always, whether you're big, little, whatever, money budgets are always difficult. Interesting thing though, most small businesses are lucky if they hit 10% of a profit margin. Okay, we're not going to get into the margins of education and financial industries. They're somewhat disgusting, but that's a talk for a different day and probably a different conference. Vendor obstacles. Again, we're going to, kind of pick on these minimums. A lot of vendors will want you to work through a partner. So you're having to go back to the provider, back to the IT provider to say, hey, I need to get the thing, and the vendor won't work with me. So that becomes an issue. And then a lot of these vendors want 50 or 100 licenses to start with, or you're going to pay 50 or 100 licenses whether you have that many. When we got our start, August of 2019, and slowly ramped up, we had to either decide if we're going to eat the cost or are we going to do what we can to help our clients until we can get to the point where we can slide them into a solution that we want them to be in. So it almost has to become like a co-op. Like, hey, I need 100 people that are interested in helping us or working with us so that we can get you going. Some of the minimums. I did a little research. CrowdStrike. It's a 5-user minimum, $9 per month per user. But at the same time, what company of 9 people that doesn't do IT is really going to be able to handle using CrowdStrike? Carbon Black looks like at one point 100 devices, or was their minimum. Kaspersky, our favorite Russian backdoor antivirus, $405 a year for minimum 10 devices. It's a pretty good deal. But again, if you're 9, 8, 3 computers, you're not going to get any kind of managed solution in any way. So then we talk at long contracts, and yes, I'm going to call them out. Kaseya is probably the biggest misuser of the long contracts. 36 months for any and all products. And in some cases, if you tell them, hey, we want a new product, they might just go ahead and slip a whole new renewal and all your stuff is reset. So moving on here. So what can we do? Well, a couple things. And this I both love and kind of, a little freak that I had to follow Alyssa. She had so much energy, but I love that she kind of talked about all those soft skills, because no matter what we do, we have to find those soft skills and we have to align them to the companies and the businesses that we do work with from day to day. So speaking a common language, I have found that, it acts as a bit of a Rosetta Stone to relate things back to a car. So I have actually walked up to people and said, hey, got a question. Have you ever tested the airbag in your car? And they look at you like your head's on fire because nobody would test their airbag. That would really piss off your insurance company. You'd probably be out all that money on your own. But we in security have the ability to say, hey, would you like me to test your computer? Now, I'm not saying you're going to launch some full pen test on a business of 4 people. But if they say, well, we think our antivirus works pretty well, If you know how to use Atomic Red Team, say, hey, I'd like your permission. I'd like to sit down and run some testing. Yeah, as somebody said, fire extinguisher, first aid kit, those kind of things. So I have found that car safety and security have a lot of parallels. I actually talked about this in a pre-recorded talk like 2 Wild West hacking fests ago, where the idea was, hey, steal this talk. And I want you all to steal this talk as well, because this is an important one for those people that you work with and you do business with day in and day out. So both car safety and security have laws and regulations, okay? With car safety, don't speed, don't drive drunk. Those are illegal. With security, it's things like don't store PII in open S3 buckets. Don't store credit cards or when you shouldn't. That will get you in trouble with PCI. Proactive and reactive tools. We have a variety of tools, EDRs, SIMs, all those tools that we know about, and cars have the same thing. There are assistive sensors, your backup sensors, front crash sensors, lane sensors, all that. I mean, the cars almost drive themselves, even though they don't want to say that. But then things that are more reactive, seatbelts, brakes, airbags, those all apply back into security. And you can use that back and forth to help there. Also, that explains the need for layers. If I take away the brakes in your car, you're going to have a bad time. If I take away your brakes and your airbag, you're going to have an even worse time. So trying to provide, yes, it's defense in depth, because a lot of times with an insurance company, they'll ask, well, do you have this? And they'll say, yep, but they don't have any other tools on the endpoints. And we've all seen enough examples of how to bypass this EDR, how to bypass this AV. So also try to speak in their own words. If you're trying to work with a small clinic, like, hey, I would like, your network has a problem. And the best way I can describe it is, like, I think your network has like a clot, and like a blood clot, but for the network, and we need to clear that clot. So trying to use some of their words without being disingenuous, without coming off like you're just trying to make a pitch, is always a great idea as well. Yeah, and somebody said, like back in my day, seatbelts were optional. Absolutely. But that wonderful thing called survivor bias, kind of throws that off. Like, well, nothing happened to me. Cool. What about all the people that it did happen to that chose not to use a seatbelt or didn't have a seatbelt? We have to always remember that. Okay. So let's do stuff. These are simple to us. Everyone's going to look at these things like, hey, that's no big deal. But not every business is using the ultra mega Splunk thingy, the new hot EDR that's powered by AI. None of that. These are businesses that they still probably buy all their computers at Best Buy. They buy Linksys routers. They get, residential level type things like antivirus. So the simple stuff, patches, updates. Go in there and say, hey, do you know how to set up these for automatic updates? Do you know how to do that stuff? Local admin. Local admin is so bad in most SMBs. Trying to encourage least privilege. Like, hey, have an admin account for the one person that does know something about computers. MFA, all the things. Now, obviously there are strong opinions about things like SMS, or everyone's like, oh, if you don't use a YubiKey, it's nothing. SMS, MFA, if used properly, is just as good as any of the others, especially when you're looking at a small business. Your barista is not going to have to really worry about being a huge target for SIM swapping, unless it turns out that they're like massively into crypto or something like that. So MFA, all the things. Microsoft has said that 99% of the attacks they have observed could have been stopped just with MFA. That is ridiculous to think that, oh, just a quick code is all I need. Password management. So some password managers are a little harder to set up. Others are easier. But pick one. Pick one that works with what you need. Yes, even the one that's been compromised 3-4 times. Or hell, get them a password book from CVS. People make jokes online all the time about those things, but I can give you examples both in small business and in enterprise where a password book could be a lifesaver. For those of you that work in an AD environment, do you guys know where your DSRM password is? Because you might need it if you ever have a disaster and you need to recover the AD. Asset management. We all know we cannot protect what we don't know about. Now, you might think a company of 5 people shouldn't be hard to have have an idea of where those computers are at. But if there's still a Windows 7 computer that's in a conference room that nobody really thinks about, then that computer could be the one that's compromised. All right, whoops. All right, so let's do some more cool stuff. Now these are things that are a little more cool, interesting, exciting. Okay, Cyberdeception. I could go on and on and on about Cyberdeception, but hey, you know, a Raspberry Pi and a couple of Dockers spun up, that could make some trouble for an attacker. Throwing honey tokens, you know, a couple of Excel files, a couple of Word files that are in different spots that have interesting names, where somebody says, oh, hey, it's password list, I'm going to go grab it. Wade said in the Discord, you know, password.txt. I see those on desktops way too often. So, hey, make a couple of those. Make one that's a docx. An attacker pulls it over, and boom, now we've got some information on the attacker. Give them a bunch of options to make mistakes. Defender. So Defender used to get a lot of jokes, you know, when it was still Microsoft Essentials. Defender is pretty badass nowadays. Additionally, if you're paying for Defender through like Business Premium, which is $20 a month for a device, and you basically get everything that Microsoft throws into like those E5 licensing, and it's definitely in that good enough to great for small businesses. You get a paid version of Defender, you get Intune, which then gives you access to those attack surface reduction rules. For the red teamers in there in the Discord, I bet some of you can kind of agree that with ASR rules and Defender, it's kind of a tough time to get where you want. And then even if you take a little bit of time, throw in a little bit extra money using Power Automate, you can actually have those computers auto-isolate. So if something happens at 2 in the morning for whatever reason, that machine is going to get locked down. The company comes in the next morning and says, oh, hey, this computer doesn't work. Oh, it's because it got compromised. Okay. The last one here, Sysmon and Elk. So this just kind of came to me as a, I don't know, shower thought, something. Why not build black boxes for these really small businesses? It runs, you know, everything runs Sysmon. It feeds to an Elk stack or, you know, or just even to Elasticsearch, whatever. And it records. And it just records. If they have enough storage, records 45 days, 60 days, even 20 days. But then if there's an incident and they have cyber insurance, that insurance company has probably already, you know, worked with an IR company on a retainer. And that IR company is going to show up and say, all right, what happened? They're like, well, we don't really know, but we have this black box that got set up and it probably has all the information we need. Okay. So it's just like an airplane. Airplane crashes. You don't know how the heck it happened. They find the black box. They can start putting things together. Yes, an attacker could have already been on the network for, you know, 2 months, 3 months, but you'll at least see some of what has happened leading up to boom. Okay. All right, smart stuff. Security awareness, people are probably like, oh, what's so smart about security awareness? Well, let's talk more security relationships. Stop phishing and just sending videos to the people that fail. Something that we do with our small businesses, we'll work with them. We'll say, hey, we want to run one phishing test, and then we're going to hold a little get together. And in that case, what we do is we run a test, we collect the data, find out which ones failed, and then if there's users that actually spotted it, reported it, hit the report button, we reach out to all of them, say, hey, want to buy you coffee, want to buy you a drink. We're going to have a little workshop at your office. or a workshop somewhere, somewhere else. And we're going to sit down and talk about the phishing email that got sent. And we're going to ask, hey, what made you think this was legit? And what did this person who called it out, what made you think this was was a fish, was not legit? They get together. It's not confrontational. And even the business owner or leader doesn't know who actually failed or not. So don't just fish and send vids. Create real conversations in these small businesses and create what I call tier 1 responders. Bob, who gets the email that looks funny, he's going to call Sharon over because Sharon is really good at spotting those. And Sharon's going to walk over and go, yeah, that's not right. Okay. All right. Okay. So we're getting close to landing this plane here. So we can help you help them. What I'd like you to do, if you're comfortable with it, and you want to have a chat with me, helping a business that you care about, help them with messaging about security. If you think they need more help than you're able to provide. My time is free when it comes to helping people, through a Zoom call or anything like that. So scan that. You can book time with me. You can email me there at the address set up. We're happy to help.